space is meant for us. So knowing that we're still going through that and we're still kind of persevering and supporting each other in that process, to me personally, makes me very glad to be a woman.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Kayla. Adia, what makes you most proud to be a woman?
What makes me most proud to be a woman is that women are God's beautiful creations, and without women, we would not be here. So I'm just glad that I'm gang, you know?
Yes. And you know, just to piggyback on what Kayla said, for you, think about it, in history, women weren't able to run in sports and be a part of sports teams. You are now a living example of how women have pioneered throughout history to become a part of any setting and a part of any entity, right? You're now running track and field. You're now in communication. There was a time when women couldn't be in communications. They were always male reporters or males this, and so you guys are just pioneering and showing that women can be in any type of circle, in any type of position. And yes, that versatility is amazing. Thank you. All right. So my next question, what are some unique talents that you feel you bring to the subculture of women? Adia, you start this question.
A few unique talents that I think I bring is my creativity, because I'm really inspired by women surrounded around me, especially in sports. So we have women commentators, women coaches, and I just feel like, well, kind of to piggyback off of our question before, because women weren't really recognized or weren't really allowed to be a part of a lot of things. I just feel like creativity is a big thing that I could bring to the table. Yeah, I hope that made sense.
It made sense. I want to say something that you bring to the subculture. Adia, although she's being very shy right now, is a very bold person. She, I think I put her in a position where she's now speaking in a forum where she, she is talking to us, and she wants to make sure that she's clear or whatever. And this is maybe new to her, but Adia is very bold. When I met her, she is very stern and she's very bold. Another thing I feel like Adia brings is Adia, she's dedicated. I remember her mom telling me she's getting up 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning to go and work out or go run on the track for rehearsal. She constantly go to school and then would come home and have to run and exercise and do all these different things. And her dedication, her commitment to her craft is something that a lot of people don't have. Like managing your schedule as a high schooler, plus having something like that going on, and then dealing with regular adolescent, issues, that is something amazing that, once you're in it, you don't, really think about it, right? But that dedication, Adia, is something that you bring, and that's a talent, and that's unique to you, because not a lot of people have that. So own that, okay? All right, Kayla, what are some talents or traits that you can bring to the subculture of women?
I think personally, my biggest thing would be my perseverance. I like to say that I'm not always the first person to make it, right? I might try out for something, I might go to do something, and on the first go around, I might not make it, I might not be successful with it, but going back into it and having this thought that I'm not going to let anybody else stop me. If they told me no the first time, I'm gonna make them regret it, or they're gonna say yes the second time. And so kind of having that perseverance and having that resistance of you're not going to tell me no is, in my opinion, my biggest strength and my biggest contribution, because it forces you to keep going, and it forces you to, like I said, make people regret it in the long run and push yourself forward.
Awesome. Yes, I love it. Perseverance. Yes, perseverance is important for women because we have been told no for so long and still have been told no. If you think about the inequality in pay, we talked about in one of our last sessions how, we're still fighting for equal pay. right? But if we sit down and say, okay, well, you don't want to pay us equal pay, we're okay, we'll fine, we'll take it. No, we're still advocating for equal pay. We're still advocating for the woman's voice. So that perseverance definitely is needed in our subculture, because we need to continue to push forward when we hear the no's, to push forward until we hear a yes. Awesome, awesome. So for our next question, what are some challenges you face as a young woman that you feel like women in the past did not? Kayla, is on you to start, I think.
I think right now the biggest thing is visibility. I feel like in the past, women have always been judged, women have always been critiqued. We have always been told, you know, you look like this, you look like that, or you act this way, or you act that way. But I think especially with like social media and so many influencers, there's this feeling as if someone's watching your every single move. And that it's not just people you know and love, but also just strangers that you don't know. And so I feel like as a young woman growing up, especially with Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook and everything like happening at once, there's this pressure to kind of dress yourself up and make yourself look a certain way and act a certain way and be a certain way to fit the mold at all times, because you're taught that you never know who's watching, because anyone can pull out a phone and record you in any instance. And so I think that's something that wasn't necessarily around before. And so there is this added pressure of trying to be on game at all times. And that can become really stressful really quickly.
Yeah, a lot of people's secrets are still hidden. And I definitely get that pressure. But just to add to that, you know, we push for that. We push for, you know, if you think about it from a different class of thought, where people felt like, okay, everything that was going on in the culture, in the world, was kind of pushed under the rug and people were silently in pain. Now we have this this magnifying glass on everything that goes on. And it's like, okay, where's the balance? It's like everything is up for grabs. So there's nothing that is sacred, you know, and that's, you know, something that I was talking about as well. Like, you know, where do we find the balance? Do you have something to add to that, Kayla? Do you think that there's a balance between, you know, things being shoved under the rug and this magnifying glass?
I think there can be, but I think it's very much like a personal thing. Like I feel like a lot of people might choose to be influencers and it's not consent, but you do end up opening yourself up to getting more critiques and having more responses. But let's say if you keep like your Instagram private, you're probably not going to be able to have people look at you and critique you as much, but still get access to everyone else outside. So there are some ways to do it, but it really is like on a personal basis.
Awesome. Thank you. Adia, I'm going to pose the question to you. What are some challenges that young women face that you feel that women in the past did not?
I kind of agree with what Kayla was saying, but I would like to add on that a lot of challenges that women face, people do like putting their 2 cents in on, especially men, which I hate so much, because men always try to put their 2 cents on a lot of things, like especially like right now in society, reproductive rights, just adding laws about women's bodies and trying to put their 2 cents in on it, which I wholeheartedly disagree on. So that's just one thing that kind of I thought about when you asked this question. Like that's the first thing I thought about.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's like in the past, it's like we went through that, but women were more complacent, right? It was always all the way to the point where women couldn't work unless they got permission from their husbands.
Yeah.
Right. So it was very basic. It was a basic thing. Like people, you know, the husband, you know, kind of decided how many children will be had in the family and all that. And then we got to a space where women had more control over how many children they would have because they had, you know, birth control or, you know, things like that. But now we're going backwards, it seems like, where now men are now making the decisions and trying to be more involved in how our reproductive system works and how many children we can or can't have. So yes, it does seem like it didn't happen before, but it's actually just going backwards.
Right.
So you guys are like feeling what, you know, women maybe in the 50s or, you know, 60s are now we're used to feeling. Now you guys are starting to see that again. So yes, definitely that. So both of those are amazing. And oh my God, those are amazing. I appreciate that. So just to recap, Kayla talked about how, some of the issues that, young women are facing are, the fact that everything they do is under a microscope through social media, through people's physical cameras. Your first kiss is recorded sometimes, some people, or, just anything that you're going through. People can just pull out their phones and record you. And Adia alluded to the fact that there's so much conversation where men have so much, or trying to have so much say in how our bodies are treated. And so, although we as older women or women in other generations have seen challenges, these young women are saying we're facing these things too. And our stuff is being, put under a microscope on top of having those issues. So thank you so much for that, guys. All right, for our next question, but you guys kind of already alluded to it. So Adia, this kind of piggybacks on Kayla's statement about social media. Do you feel social media has a negative or positive impact on young women?
I want to say it has kind of both, but like positively, social media is used to impact, empower, and just uplift women. Like, for example, if you see a woman starting her like fitness journey, you're going to comment, oh my gosh, good luck, like just empowering words to her, but negatively, like social media, there's a lot of debates on things that impact women, especially young girls. And for example, sorry, I'm a little nervous because I'm
Don't be
scared.
nervous. We understand. Don't worry.
Negatively though, there's a lot of debates on that affect young women. So like debates like colorism and just body appearance and things like that. That makes young girls like really question their worth and question themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was perfect, Adia. That was perfect. Thank you. It's okay to be nervous. We get it. This is not easy. This is not easy to get in a room full of people. First of all, you don't see them. You don't know who's in the room. So this is even worse than being in a room of people you can see. So it's okay. You're here. We got you. Okay. Kayla.
Yeah, Adia, that was great.
Kayla, so what's your take on it? Do you feel like social media has a negative or positive impact on young women?
I agree that it's definitely both. I do think that, like I mentioned before, with social media, you do feel like you're under a magnifying glass, which is a negative. There's this pressure to, like I said, always look good and kind of put forth an image that you want to have. But on the flip side, like you mentioned, it does allow a space that is very welcoming and very uplifting. And it allows people to talk about issues that they face that they might not understand outside of it. So like, I know we're talking specifically about like the subculture of women as a whole, but if we want to look at like Black women and what they experience, other types of women might not understand that. So having social media allows you to say like, I know you're not a Black woman, so you don't get it 100%, but like, this is what I go through as a Black woman and why you as a fellow woman should care and be trying to help me and uplift me. And so it allows people of different cultures to actually like come together and help each other out and uplift each other and understand each other's struggles, because we're not the other person in a way that like you don't always see, because women's issues don't always get the attention that they should and the traction that they should.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Or it's so talked about, it's so saturated that like, we could be here all night. It's so saturated that, women are being pit against each other, right? When Adia mentioned like colorism, I remember there was a time in my life that I was a little ashamed of my brown skin. I wouldn't say ashamed, but I just, I would envy girls with lighter skin because I felt like they got more attention and they weren't teased as much of me. And then when I became an adolescent, I realized, oh no, girl, this melanin is perfect. It's all good and dandy. And then as I became a woman, I love this brown stuff, And that's not to say that I don't love my light-skinned sisters. Like I have a sister who is very much lighter than me, and I believe that she's beautiful too. We are beautiful. Like, you know, even women in other cultures. I can look at a woman who is Hispanic or a woman that is Irish and say you're beautiful. But colorism is a real thing, and it happens in our culture. So yes, those are issues that we get to talk about on social media. But if they're healthy, because it goes both ways sometimes. Sometimes it hurts people and sometimes it helps people. Yes, awesome. Thank you, ladies. So we talked about some issues. We talked about some things that we are most proud about. We talked about who we are and what we bring to the fold, right? So how do we now then move forward as a subculture? How do we take this newfound knowledge? How do we take this newfound awareness, right? How do we move forward? What are some of the steps that we can take? And I think Kayla, you went first. Kayla, I'm gonna let you go first, and then Adia, you go.
Okay. I think the biggest thing would be challenging things that we know are wrong. I think we often hear a lot of microaggressions. We often hear a lot of stereotypes, and we just kind of like take it like, okay, I got to keep moving. I have to keep pushing. And I feel like, especially with like hustle culture, like you are encouraged to like just keep going and disregard it. But I think if we want to kind of move forward as a subculture of women, we need to come together and like really critique things of like, okay, well, why do we think that? Or why are you okay with that? Why are you perpetuating this thought process? Because it helps us support each other, stand up for each other, and move forward in a way that is healthier and more positive for the next person and for the next generation. And I think on top of that, looking at things in a very intersectional light as well, of being like, okay, you know, you as a Black woman are going through this. I'm going to help you and use my, you know, power or strength as like a white woman to benefit and to help you, and kind of like playing off of that, but really all about coming together and supporting each other in a way that not only helps like our generation, but those that are younger than us and coming up after us.
Awesome. Thank you. Adia. So the question is on you. How do we now, with all that we have talked about, with our awareness, with our understanding of what's happening, how do we now move forward as a subculture?
I feel like the older generation should have to kind of self-reflect on how internalized misogyny has been so natural, natural for them, and trying to pass it down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Unpack that for me a little bit.
Okay, so let me see. I feel like
Oh, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Mm-hmm. Make sure you're not muted. Try again. Can you guys hear her? So mute yourself and then unmute yourself. It could be a signal issue. It's okay. So while you work out your audio, huh? Okay, you're gonna go. Okay, perfect. So while we wait on Adia, anybody have any questions in the chat box? Let's see. We have any questions?
Okay, now I can't hear you. I'm not quite sure if it's my computer, but I can't hear you either. No, I can't hear you.
All right.
Yeah.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, you're
Okay.
good.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna ask you the next question while we wait on Adia. All right. So this is actually the answer that Adia was kind of alluding to, is what I think she was going to direct us to. So how do we close the age gap in the subculture of women? How can past generations be more supportive?
I think it really comes down to openness and communication. And I know I'm a comm major, so my answer to things is always communication. But I really do think that it comes down to having these conversations and being intentional about how we talk about them and not just actually doing it. Like, I think it's important to, when you have these conversations, not speak from a place of hurt, of like, well, this is what I'm going through, or well, this is what I went through, but really just come together and kind of bridge that gap and saying, well, this is what I'm going through and I would like your support here. And, how did you get through anything similar, to really kind of take note and kind of learn from each other. That way you're understanding perspectives of how things have shifted and changed, but how fundamentally a lot of these things, like you mentioned earlier, are still very much the same and are very much similar. And so I think
Mhm.
that's the biggest thing. And then on top of that, actually listening and not just speaking to get a response or listening to respond to somebody, but actually listening to understand them and what they're saying.
Got it. Got it. And so I'm going to say for myself, like, I have a daughter too. And sometimes I feel like we're speaking the same language, and sometimes I feel like we're in two foreign countries. And I'm getting tired thinking about it sometimes. Sometimes it's like, I feel like for myself personally, it's the trauma of what I went through and the anxiety that then tells me, okay, let me protect her from X, or let me stop her from making that same mistake. And someone recently told me that you wouldn't have been the person that you are had you not made those mistakes or gone through that particular trauma. And then when I think about the woman I am today, I'm like, it was tough, but do I really want my kid to, go through that? So, I say that to say, just, I hear you. But from my perspective, and I know some other women may, have their own perspective, but from my perspective, when I think about closing the gap, I think that's the place I'm coming from. That fear and anxiety of like, I don't know if I can buy a ticket to sit and watch my daughter repeat some of the things that I did. And I'm very proud to say that she hasn't. Like, she's about to be 17 and she has jumped over loops that she has surpassed a lot of the things, and she has not been through any of the things that I had gone through in my adolescent life. So I'm kind of very proud of that. But then I wonder, okay, is she gonna still have that grit and that intuitiveness, strength that I have? But her experience is her experience, right? So, it's not for me to find out, right? I just have to get the ticket and watch and just, kind of just let the experience happen. So I definitely get that. So Kate, to recap what Kayla said, she basically said how we can, close the age gap, or, kind of build this connection and, build a bridge, is by communicating more, being understanding, and not listening, not talking to be heard, right? Is what you said?
Yeah, not speaking to like get a response, but to actually
Not
like
speaking to get a
understand. Yeah.
right. And to get understanding. So what we need from you is understanding. So Adia's back. I just had to do that little quick quick little musical break. Adia's back. So Adia, I'm gonna catch you back up. So I'm gonna repeat the question and you tell us your answer again. Can Adia, can you unmute yourself?
Am I good now?
Mm.
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm so sorry, everybody.
You're fine. Don't be
I don't know
sorry.
what's
It's
going on with the
technology.
school
It happens.
Wi-Fi.
No worries. No worries. We appreciate you coming back and sticking to it. So we were talking about how do we move forward as a subculture of women? Was that what the one?
It was about closing the age gap.
Yeah, I gave that one to you. She had left the question before. So we want to hear her answer for the question before, and then we'll catch up to the next question. So how do we move forward as a subculture? How do we move forward as a subculture of women?
Oh, I was saying that with the past generations internalized misogyny, we need to put an end to that because they pass it down to younger generations and it's kind of not good. So he's asking what I mean by that to unpack it. So for example, when older generations, like say we're in the house and a man, like a family member who's not a woman comes in, they'll say, oh, go to the back of the house, put on some clothes, or oh, put on, like, things like that. And I feel like because they face like misogyny from like their like elders, they're kind of passing it down, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Got
So
it.
put an end to just internalized misogyny because it's not healthy.
Got it. Okay. All right. So the next question was kind of alluding to that, right? So it was, how do we close the gap, the age gap in the subculture of women, and how can past generations be more supportive? So your answer to that is like, stop passing on our view, like not so much our views, but our values, right? One of the things in response to that I have been kind of like rethinking was this idea of when someone walks in a room, right? And your children are there, you're like, go hug such and such. And if the child doesn't do it, you're saying they're being disrespectful or rude. Right? That child should be able to have a choice to hug such and such or not, right? Yes. But that doesn't mean not to have manners to say hello or something like that. But I also feel like when we try to push children or just push anyone to either to speak or greet someone a certain way that they're not comfortable with, I think that's a value that was passed on, because when we were younger, I know in my family, from my experience, that was the thing. Or go hug such and such, or go say hi to such and such, or all these different things. And if you were like no, or if you didn't want to do it, or sometimes you would do it just because you didn't want to get in trouble, that almost makes children or younger people feel disenfranchised, or take away their power. So I definitely get where you're coming from with that. I totally understand. Okay. All right, so the next question is, like, do you guys have any, more comments or things you want to share about those topics or those questions? Anything you want to share with us? Any final words on like how do we grow as a subculture?
I think going off of what you were mentioning earlier, a lot of it is really just unlearning and preparing to teach the new generation something different. So like you mentioned, the whole instance of like, we'll go hug someone or go give them a kiss. That whole thing is very much, as you mentioned, it kind of tells kids at a young age that you don't have autonomy over your body and that you have to behave a certain way to be respectful. And your feelings and your kind of like thoughts and emotions about it come second. And although it seems like such a simple thing of like, well, we just said, go give them a kiss or go give them a hug. At a certain point, it kind of spirals into the rest of their life and how people move forward. So I do think a lot of it's just unlearning because, as you mentioned, it feels normal. It feels like, well, what's wrong with that? It's not a big deal, but it transcends beyond that. And so a lot of it is really just unlearning it like in your own life, because it does help you yourself, but then also that way you don't end up teaching it to future generations.
Absolutely. And that's the basis of it. Just unlearning some of the things that, you know, because not all things that we were taught were bad. It's just that some of the things, the message that it sent, right?
Yeah.
What was the message behind this particular activity, right? And so that's where the understanding and communication needs to come in, and like explaining to your children, you know, like I think there's a teacher, I think it's on social media, where she has this thing on her wall. She has 4 different ways that her students can be greeted by her. And she asks them, you know, point to the one that you want. And she could even dance with them. If they want a hug, she'll give them a hug. If they want a high five, they get a high five. And I thought that was a way of empowering them, because they get to choose how they're greeted in the morning. And she gets to choose what she's open to as well. So I think that is really key in how we can start to move forward, like building this understanding and communicating ways that we can shift some of our mindsets and our thinking, our behaviors and values. All right. So Adia, you have any other things you want to share with us? Any other, you know, points you want to make?
No, I think we kind of touched on all the points.
We touched on all points. We got all points. All right. So I have a couple more questions before we go. Who is the most influential woman in your life? You can have more than one. Adia, we'll start with you.
The most influential woman in my life is my mom. She's on here. Shout out, mommy. Hey. She's just done so much for me, and I'm so blessed and grateful for her. She's raised me and my brother kind of alone, and I just look up to her and admire her, because she's really, yeah, she's like that.
That's my buddy. Yeah. All right. Kayla, who is the most influential woman in your woman in your life?
Yeah, I have a few. It's also my mom. She's also on the call. My grandmother, who's also on the call. And then my cousin Ebony. I think the 3 of them have really kind of banded together to show me what it means to be a strong woman and what that looks like. And the fact that they are all very different women and then at different like points in their life on top of that, I feel like I've seen them grow and I've seen them kind of change and go through different struggles. And because it is 3 different women, like oftentimes, like if I'm going through something similar, it's like, okay, well, how would one woman handle it? How would the other one handle it? And so it kind of gives me a bit of versatility, or to like look and decide how I would want to best approach a situation, because they have all been such great examples.
Awesome. Love it. All right. And for my final question, before we start to see what the audience has to say, is how many women do you commit to influencing for the rest of this Women's History Month, which is 2 days, but well, I think Women's History is going to be for the rest of the year. I think it goes far beyond March, but how many women do you commit in the next 2 days of influencing?
So yeah, I can start. Personally, I think as an RA, I have access to a lot more women just because I live with them. Like I kind of help hopefully mold them and help them like make decisions in college. Where as a freshman, it can be really difficult to figure out how you want to make decisions and the type of person you want to be moving forward. And so I think my goal would be to at least commit to helping half of the women on my floor, just because, like I said, I do interact with them on a daily basis. So hopefully, even if it's not me actually like speaking to them, but even them seeing like how I carry myself, or how, you know, their roommates carry themselves, that we can all kind of help find common ground on moving forward as women.
Awesome. Thank you, Kayla. Adia, how many women do you commit to influencing this Women History Month? So in the next 48 hours.
I'm kind of considered like a girls team leader on my track and field team. And the freshmen really come to me for advice, or if they're feeling like they have nobody else to really talk to, so they come to me for advice. So I feel like I influence them not just like in the past, but like every day moving forward, and showing them that like them coming into college is not that difficult. Oh, it is difficult because it was difficult for me, but I try to help them make their journey and their transition into college easier. And also with my podcast or just my progression in track and field, I have little sisters back home and they really reach out to me and ask me how I'm doing. So I kind of tell them like, oh, I'm kind of like, today wasn't good, but I know tomorrow will be better. And let them know like, even though you face trials and tribulations, we can overcome it, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate y'all. So let's all give these ladies some support and a round of applause for being here tonight and talking with us and, just really getting into some of these questions. It's unfortunate that, we had this 1 hour to kind of talk, but I definitely want to continue these conversations and also continue to have conversations. So one of my homework assignments for everyone is to create a circle of women that you can have these type of conversations within your circle. Because not often are we talking about how do we change this, how do we influence the subculture, and how can we build diversity and inclusion in the subculture. What are some challenges in our subculture and who in our lives are influencing us? Those are not our regular conversations, but I would like to normalize this type of conversation, not just with me, but you all can be ambassadors within your circle and build these types of circles of people. It doesn't have to be Zoom. It could be, over lunch or brunch. It could be, after class, whatever. But I think the more we have these conversations, the more we get into each other's minds. The one thing that I think is so important about this new culture of, I would say, the info age is that people are talking more, right? In the past, people were so hush-hush, but I think the scariest person to ever meet is someone who is silent. You don't know what they're thinking, you don't know what they're feeling, you don't know what they've been through. But the fact that people are so open and are trying to be authentic and sharing no matter what it is, even if somebody's telling me their ugly side, at least I know where they stand, right? But I say that to say communication, this may sound a little cliche, is the key. It will help us to grow. It will help us to become more aware of each other and figure out how we can support each other, right? Like Kayla said earlier, learning to listen, learning to understand, not just talking to respond, or not just, talking to each other to be ready for a response. It is important to really listen to each other and not listen to respond to what someone has to say. Sometimes there's no response needed. Someone could just be sharing something with you because they want to get it off their chest. So again, ladies, thank you so much. Audience, we have 5 more minutes till time. Do you have any questions for our panelists or any remarks? I think you can unmute yourselves if you have a question.
I have a question. I'm Kayla's mom, and Shimona, thank you for creating this space in this community, because I have so enjoyed their perspectives. Young ladies, I'm curious to know, as both of you are away at school and you have activities going on and there's clearly the schoolwork, like what keeps you grounded while you're away and home from the people that know you best?
Personally, I think it's my friends. I think, especially my friends from freshman year, I think they have been the people to kind of like see you through. Because freshman year is hard. Like Adia said, it's not the best time. You really are trying to figure out who you want to be. Because it's very much like, well, I'm not in middle or high school anymore. Like, I got to be grown. But then it's like, I'm a freshman. Like, I'm 18, right? Like, you're really trying to figure out that balance and who you want to be because you think it sets you up for the rest of your life. And so for me personally, I think it's my friends from freshman year and that they do help. Like they've seen me from like bottom at my worst to kind of like moving forward. And so they can be the ones to be like in a time of crisis, like, what are you doing? That doesn't make sense. You used to do this, and kind of like keeping you in check and making sure that you're doing what's best for you and who you actually are.
For me, what keeps me grounded is my support team. So like my mom, my friends, my teammates, and just them keeping me on track and making sure that I'm doing what I have to do. And just knowing that I have a community surrounded around me that supports me and loves me. And that if I'm down, they're gonna pick me up. So that's what keeps me grounded.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen, for the question. Any more questions from the audience? Just unmute yourself. No more questions?
I have a quick one. Ladies, do you see the subculture of women improving, staying the same, or getting worse? I believe, I think it was Adia who had alluded to men making more decisions about women's bodies and about certain protections being rolled back. Do you guys foresee, I think, things getting better, things staying the same, or things getting worse?
That's a good question. I think things are getting better, even though like we're kind of not reliving history, but things in the past, we're kind of similar to things in the past. I think that things are getting better because women are now having a voice and we speak up now, we're more vocal. So I would say things are getting better.
I agree. I think especially with social media and even spaces like this, like having the ability to talk about it is the biggest thing. And that when these rollbacks are happening, or like when we're seeing it in the news, the amount of women who come forward and are like, well, that's not right, and are actually like speaking on it and are not letting things slip through the cracks, because with so much news, I feel like that does happen where it's like one thing after the next. But having people sit there and be like, okay, this just happened, I don't know if you knew this, definitely helps, so that way you don't forget about it and that we are vocal about it and we can keep the conversation going so that it doesn't just become a complacent issue.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate the questions, audience. So we are wrapping up. It is now 8:58. And as always, I would like to thank the audience for participating and coming on tonight. Again, I would like to thank my panelists for coming on. So in the chat box, I would like for all the ladies on here, all the participants here, to stretch your stuff in the chat box. Tell us about something that you're doing, or share a comment or a quote that you want to share with us tonight in the chat box, so that we can encourage you, so that we can celebrate you. This is Women History Month, but this is only a month for us to spotlight women's history. Women history is something that's a part of us, and we make that history every day by whatever things we're doing. So if you have a business, if you have a project, if you have a website, a podcast, a program or organization, a quote, or a job title, you want to share your job title, whatever it is, put it in the chat box. That is our rally, that is our strut. So go ahead and flood the chat box with all of that, your links, your Instagrams, everything, put them in the chat box. Additionally, I would like to say that my next adventure is I'm a captain for the National Alliance for Mental Illness NAMI walk this year, which is going to be on May 22nd, 2022. If anyone wants to participate and be on my team, you can email me at shimona.kirkland@gmail.com. And I'm going to try to put that in the chat box. I'm a little technically challenged tonight because I put water in my. We've done a Zoom with my tablet before, so I keep losing the Zoom. So again, that's shimona.kirkland@gmail.com. My name should be on the screen somewhere. All right, I found it. All right. And just to give a little background about NAMI, to self-disclose, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder back in 2010. I had some symptoms in my adolescent years, but of course my family didn't know. But once I was diagnosed, I got connected with NAMI, and they provided me with support and services that allowed me to be able to raise my children, work in a lucrative career, live healthy, and be in control and empowered while dealing with my diagnosis. They created resources and programs to help me understand, to help me cope and recover. And so I am an avid advocate for this program. So anyone who you know that deals with depression, anxiety, or any other mental health issue, NAMI is a great resource for them. The organization website is nami.org, and they provide services in multiple states, but I know them most by their work in New York City. So if you're interested in participating in this walk, please email me and I am happy to have you. So that's my little bit. So with that said, thank you everybody and good night. And I appreciate you all. Good night, good night, good night.